Hi, everybody. Welcome to WikiHow's live webinar and live Q&A session with Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Today, we're talking about dealing with relationship conflict. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. We think that this webinar is going to be helpful for pretty much anybody who's dealing with any kind of relationship conflict or is in any relationships with friends, family, partners, so pretty much all of us. We know relationships can be hard in a regular situation, and now we're in the middle of a pandemic and things are even more difficult. So we thought it was just a great time to bring on an expert, a clinical psychologist who can speak with us about some of those issues we're facing and just help us better manage our relationships and conflict that naturally comes up in relationships. So thank you again to our audience. Thank you to Dr. Chloe. So Dr. Chloe Carmichael has been working with us at WikiHow as an expert over the past year. She's co-authored dozens of articles on relationships and mental health. And we've seen so many questions coming in on those articles. And so right now we just thought it was a really ripe time to meet people where they are, which is online and at home, and talk through some of those questions. So Dr. Chloe, thanks for partnering with us. Do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Holly. Thank you for having me, and thank you to WikiHow. I've always been a big fan of WikiHow myself, so the chance to participate with the WikiHow community and share about what I know is really exciting for me. I'm a clinical psychologist, as you mentioned, and my office is in New York City, but I also reach around the globe, whether it's with my books or whether it's with sessions and courses and things. So I'm excited to be here and answer questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chloe. So today we are going to be talking about relationship conflict. So WikiHow's relationship articles are read by millions of people every month. People come looking for advice on their marriages, their friendships, and dating, all of the above. And then we add in a global pandemic, and there are plenty of questions. So today, with Dr. Chloe's help, we're going to answer your pressing relationship questions. We know that relationships are already really hard, and right now we are dealing with so many unprecedented things when it comes to this pandemic. So some of the questions we've been getting have been about relationships in general. Others have been about how to navigate coronavirus and its effects on families and job loss. And we are really excited to be able to address some of these particular concerns. And so please feel free to ask questions throughout this webinar if you're struggling with something specific to the pandemic or just in general with your loved ones. Please post in the live chat. We're very excited to hear from you. So we picked out some anonymous questions to answer with Dr. Chloe to start us off, and then we'll also be waiting to hear from you in the live chat. So just a brief intro for anyone who's kind of new to WikiHow. I want to talk about who we are. So we are the world's most popular how-to website. We're live in 18 languages. We have over 180,000 articles on all types of different topics, of course, including relationships, our topic today. And we like to say that everything you read on WikiHow was written by someone who wanted to help somebody else. That's because our mission is to help everyone on the planet learn how to do anything. So without further ado, we're here today to talk about relationships and to connect you with Dr. Chloe and have her answer some of your questions. So thank you again, Dr. Chloe, for being here. We're going to jump into some of those questions we received before the event. Thanks to everyone who registered and put in questions. And as we go through, we're also going to be peppering in questions from the live audience. So please ask away, everybody. We're going to start on romantic relationships. So, Dr. Chloe, this first question is from somebody who is overthinking everything in their life, especially with the person they just started to date. They're having anxiety about the complications they might encounter. What should they do?
Well, first of all, I want to normalize that. I can tell kind of by the tone of the question, it sounds like some, kind of self-critical thinking, right? So you're overthinking everything in your life is what the it says, and especially with the person I just started to date. And so I just want to normalize and actually start with a question, which is, are you sure that you're overthinking? Because, obviously I don't know the person who asked the question, but I will say sometimes people can be critical of themselves and feel like they're overthinking something when in fact they're actually just paying attention in a healthy way. And in dating, I sometimes see that with people that want to have a partner. They're dating for a partner. And so when they're dating someone who seems like maybe they're giving mixed signals or something like that, the person might come to my office saying, oh, I feel like I'm overthinking things. I should relax and go with it. And sometimes I'm actually like, hey, wait a minute, maybe you're actually responding to something legitimate. So first of all, I just want to invite you to, kind of befriend the part of yourself that's overthinking and ask that part of yourself, what it is concerned about. And if the part is concerned about getting over invested in someone that's not really invested in you as much, or, maybe whatever it is that is the fear, then to verbalize that and then maybe even write it down. And then start to examine if the person is actually giving you reasons for those concerns. And if they are, then you can talk about the concerns with the person. So that's one thing, is that a healthy relationship in many ways is about growing together and learning and sharing. And I can understand that some people, especially if it's about commitment, might say like, well, gee, but I don't want to like start a relationship talk. I don't know if I should talk about my fears, of being left, alone or becoming overinvested. I could seem clingy. And I want to validate that too. That there are stages where it's appropriate or not appropriate. And so there again, the good news is we can just think objectively. Are you thinking about commitment and it's only been a few weeks? Because if yes, then I might encourage you to make sure that you are thinking about dating other people and remaining open and remaining in an information gathering mode. On the other hand, if you've been dating for, a month, 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever, if it's starting to get to the point where you're becoming exclusive to that person, then I think you should be able to talk through your fears, whether they are legitimate fears that lead to a good discussion or whether it just gives the person an opportunity to reassure you. That would be a good starting point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chloe. I think those were great insights. I think especially that part about validating our own thoughts, and that, sometimes we think we're overthinking things, but we're really responding to what are legitimate concerns. I think that's really excellent. I think now is probably also a good time to mention the course that we worked on together, which is a 5-day long free email course on anxiety, which has a lot of Dr. Chloe's amazing tools on how to deal with anxiety. I took the course myself, and I really think it's helpful. So if anyone in here is interested in that, we'll be posting the link to that. And for now, we're going to move on to another question. I think, let's see. Yeah, there's our course. So another thing that's coming up, what can you do about jealousy? That's our live question. Awesome. I think that is a really important question. So Dr. Chloe, what do you think about that? Thank you, Astrid, by the way, for asking that question.
Yes, I agree. I want to thank Astrid as well, because that's a really good question. And I realize also that it takes a certain amount of vulnerability, to share and to put yourself out there. So I do want to thank everyone who's asking questions and, who's just watching and thinking and learning as well. So regarding jealousy, it's going to depend a little bit on the dynamic. So are we thinking about romantic jealousy, or jealous like mom always loved my sibling best, or, there's different kinds of jealousy. I even sometimes work with mothers that are, kind of jealous of the bond that their nanny has with their child, So jealousy in relationships can mean a lot of different things. And so one of the first things that I want to think about jealousy as is oftentimes it's an indicator of a boundary violation, right? Oftentimes it means someone is occupying a role or a space that you feel is rightly actually supposed to be yours, right? And so sometimes that jealousy can actually be a healthy signal to you that something is awry. And so just to take the example, let's say that you have a boyfriend who's making you jealous, just as an example. You would ask yourself, am I jealous because, I'm spinning out stories in my head? He goes to the store to buy a coffee and I'm thinking he's having an affair and he's giving me no reason for that. Or am I jealous because there are things he's doing that I don't actually feel are appropriate, that I wouldn't do because I feel like they would make him jealous. And again, every relationship dynamic is going to be different, but there is such a thing in relationships as a healthy sense of possession and a healthy sense of ownership of roles that you have, and of what exclusivity means to you as a couple. And so again, every couple is going to define it differently. Some couples might say, well, for us, like, we can totally go have lunch with our exes and it's no big deal. And we both do it. We both feel that that's okay and that's fine and it works for us. We might have other couples that say, no, actually, our boundaries as a couple are a little different and we wouldn't do that. So whatever the behavior is that's making you jealous, you might ask yourself, is this something I would do to my partner? Is this something that feels appropriate in our relationship? And then if it's not, I would encourage you to, if it's just like absolute, the person is having an affair and you're jealous, then you should, perhaps just break up with them if they don't know how to be faithful. But if it's actually maybe just something like, you maybe just haven't yet really agreed on what's what, that you might just tell them, I have to admit, I feel kind of jealous when you do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to try to control you, but I just thought I would tell you how I feel. And then you can ask for what you want. And so you might even just say, look, I realize this is just me and I'm being a little silly about this, but would you mind just giving me some extra reassurances every time that you have a business trip with your beautiful coworker, that you love me and that you care about me? Or again, if it's actually something that you're like, you know what, I'm actually not comfortable with you having lunch with your ex. Can we talk about that? Is it something that's flexible for you? Or is that an essential part of who you are? Because if it's not, then maybe the relationship may not even be a fit if you have different standards about exclusivity and boundaries, which is usually what jealousy pertains to. So I answered that one in the context of romance. As I mentioned, there's other ways that jealousy can appear, but I chose romance for now.
I think that was great. And I think the just clarification about boundaries and making sure you're talking about what's what as a couple is so important. Thank you. So, our next question, I think, is really pertinent to this time period right now because there is so much unemployment and it is really hard for a lot of people right now and it's affecting our relationships. So, this person has a partner who is trying to get a job but is not having any luck and it's causing tension in their relationship. They want to know, how should I help him?
Okay, that's an interesting question, and worded in a really thoughtful way. So I want to thank the person who shared it again. For everyone who's listening and sharing their questions. So your partner is trying to get a job, not having any luck, and then you say it's causing tension in our relationship. How should I help him? I guess I would start with the first part. It's causing tension in our relationship. And I would ask the person, who asked this question, how is it causing tension for you? And if it's because, for example, it's a hardship on you financially, like if you and your partner share the bills and you're carrying him, and that's what the tension is about, then that would be something to talk about with him. That might even be about you explaining to him how he could help you. Like if there's something that would make you feel better about that arrangement, or if his difficult job search is causing him to drink a lot and sit around the house and become grumpy, then it's not, again, necessarily about you helping him, but it might be about you learning to tell him, look, honey, I support you, I care about you, but I don't want you to take out your stress on me. And sometimes it's about needing to set boundaries. It's still, on the other hand, because getting to the second part of the question is, how should you help him? I guess, again, I would say the first part is to make sure that you're really in touch with how his struggle is affecting you and that you're conscious of it and you can talk about it like a two-way street with him. And I think that will actually set the stage for the second part, which is for you to also say to him, how can I help you? Some people want help, with mock interviews and encouragement and a hot breakfast, to kind of really cheerlead them. Some people want help by not talking about it. Some people, might want help in other ways. So I found as a psychologist that oftentimes the best way to learn how to help someone is to ask them. But it's also to make sure that whatever that tension it's causing in your relationship, that you're able to talk about that part as well.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chloe. I think that that's going to be really pertinent advice for people right now, and I hope that it helps somebody out. So I don't know if we have a live Q&A right now. I'm going to see if we have something. There we go. All right. So on the topic of heartbreak, I broke up a year ago, but I still remember those great memories, which prevents me from moving on completely and blocks me from even thinking of a new one in the future. Sometimes feel like no one is going to be the same as the one that I had. How do I deal with that? I think a lot of people can relate to this, just struggling to move on. What is your advice for that?
Okay, so that is a really, truly tender-hearted question. So I actually just want to read it again aloud myself to just make sure I'm really processing it, because I can see that Kath put a lot of thought into that. So she says, I broke up a year ago, but I still remember those sweet memories, which prevents me from moving on completely and blocks me from even thinking of a new one in the future. I sometimes feel like no one is going to be the same as the one that I had. How do I move on? So I guess, first of all, Kath, I would make sure that you're really seeing the whole picture. It sounds, when you say that the sweet memories are what are preventing you from moving on, it's hard to move on from something that we're imagining is perfect, right? And it might be helpful if you make a list of, say, the top 10, problems with that relationship, right? My guess is that you broke up for a reason. And it can sometimes actually be a constructive habit to want to just focus on the positive. There's a lot of benefits to being someone who does that. But we have to make sure that we don't allow that ability to just focus on the nice things overcome our ability to ground ourselves in reality. You have to be grounded in order to put one foot in front of the other, right? It sounds like a new age thing, like to put one foot in front of the other, first put both feet on the ground. And so you have to ground yourself in the reality. And it sounds like you've been focusing and maybe replaying those sweet memories a lot in your mind. And when we play memories in our mind, a part of our brain actually experiences those memories as happening again in life in real time. Even our bodies do. That's why when we go and ride on a roller coaster, when we watch a video of a roller coaster, our stomach will kind of jump when the roller coaster goes down, the thing, even if we're just watching a video. And our mind works the same way. So if you're constantly mentally replaying those memories in your mind, you could be deluding yourself into thinking that this is somebody that he's not or she's not. So I would urge you, first of all, to make a list of, say 10 really bad memories. And if you're trying to say that there are no bad memories, I would maybe ask you to ask your friends to remind you of some bad memories, because my guess is that there must have been some. And potentially, even if you think about the memory of that person abandoning you and breaking up with you, because your ideal partner is a steadfast person who knows their heart and who is reliable. And so the moment that person walked away from you, they kind of disqualified themselves as, good partner material. So you could even focus on that part as well. I don't know how long you were with the person, but, if you feel like you got really attached to this person very quickly, then your difficulty re-entering the dating world. Oh, good. I see your message. I'm glad to know we're kind of having a good conversation here. Part of your fear of re-entering the dating world could also be that you're afraid you're going to get hurt again because you really put your heart into this person and you thought it was working and then it wasn't. So another thing you might do, don't mean to toot my own horn here too much, but I do have Dr. Chloe's 10 Commandments of Dating on Amazon. And so sometimes just thinking strategically about how to know when and how to give your heart away a little bit, how to open it up a little bit, actually makes the person feel more ready to get out in the dating world. Sometimes, again, that reluctance to get in the dating world is because you kind of know consciously or unconsciously that you might repeat whatever dynamics caused you to get involved with somebody, that may not have actually been really available for a relationship. So, Kath, thank you so much again for the validation. Psychologists like validation too. I'm glad you mentioned that it seemed like we were on the right track. And thanks again for sharing that question.
Thank you so much, Kath and Dr. Chloe. That was great. And you'll notice in the chat, we posted a link to Dr. Chloe's books. Right now, that link will tell you a little bit about her newest book. Congratulations, by the way, Chloe, on your newest book, Nervous Energy, which is about anxiety. And she also has this one about dating, the 10 Commandments of Dating, which I think will be really helpful. Another thing you guys can do is take our free course on how to heal a broken heart. So anyone who's going through that, I think, can find a lot of help in that course as well. We'll post that in the chat. So moving on to our next question, I think with timing, we're going to kind of skip ahead a little bit and look to some of our questions about friends and family. So keep those questions coming. Right now, we have this question, which I think is pretty relevant for a lot of people who are cooped up with their families more than they have been probably ever. And we're stressing each other out. So here's this question. What if someone in my family is stressing me out? Is there anything I could do that won't alter the good parts of our relationship?
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to just applaud the person who asked this question, because I actually think it conveys a pretty sophisticated understanding of relationships, right? That this person is able to say, this is my family member. I love them. There's so much that's good about our relationship, but the relationship is stressing me out. And I also love that the person is taking ownership of saying, is there anything I could do? They're not just kind of saying like, oh, I'm really mad at my family member for just being who they are. They're saying, what could I do that would try to work with that dynamic a little bit? And so there's a few things, assuming like Hallie mentioned, that this may have a little bit to do if you're in a quarantine situation and we're all kind of stuck together under one roof. One thing that can be really nice is what's called compassionate silence. So I was a yoga teacher before I was a psychologist, and on yoga retreats, we would sometimes do compassionate silence. And I've been teaching this in some workshops and things I've been doing for corporate workshops. So the idea with compassionate silence is you and that person, if you're living together or whatever, and it's just like the constant just talking and being together is just like too much, you can say, I feel like I kind of need a little bit of a conversation break, but I want to, continue to be around and be together and just enjoy our space. But I just like to be able to just enjoy some quietude together. Quietude, which is, like quiet time, or, just spending time quietly together. And you can invite the person to do that with you. And at least that will stop them from talking, right? So depending on the nature of why or how they're stressing you out, that might work. And with compassionate silence, what you do is you agree in advance. Like, so what we're going to do is say between noon and 3, we're going to, enter into a period of silence, and you agree in advance on like if it's okay, like if you have to take a phone call, like will you go in a different room or whatever. You might even agree in advance on like if there's a music playlist that you want to have playing around the house, or if you want it to be totally silent. It's also good to agree in advance on if it's like okay to communicate by body language, or if it's really just like a compassionate silence. So that's one way that you can just take like a little bit of a quiet break, and then in other situations, if it's more just like say, just as an example, you're 22 and living with your parents because of COVID, and your mom is just like going crazy with, what are you doing with your life or whatever. In that situation, asking your mom to enter into compassionate silence isn't really going to help necessarily, because you're looking for a longer term fix. And so for that type of a thing, you can be open with the person. You can start by telling them, I want to talk to you about something for a moment. Do you have a minute? So you're making sure that the person is receptive, ready, even just the act of them verbalizing, like, yes, this is a good time. Yes, I want to hear you. Let's talk. It puts them in the right mindset usually, because they're activating the identity that they hopefully have that says, yes, when somebody comes to me and says there's something on your mind, can we talk? Like, I want to be receptive. And then you would say, I really appreciate where you're coming from, like trying to help me out with this job stuff. But honestly, it's starting to stress me out a little bit. I feel like I have it under control with my own plan, and you may even not agree with me. But I have to ask you if you'd be willing to leave that topic on the shelf, at least for a week, so that we could just have a little space from it. Would that be okay? And if the person says yes, and then, has a few mistakes where they bring it up, I would encourage you to be compassionate and humorous and just say, Mom, remember we had a little agreement. You can even mark the calendar, like, look, Mom, on July 20th, we can talk about this again. Jot it down, and we'll have a big talk on July 20th, all about my career. But this is one little break moment, right? And if the person says, no, I'm not willing to put it on the shelf, it might be good to ask them why, to learn, like, is it because you're concerned about something, really urgent in this department, like that a week even feels like too much, like just inviting them to talk about it. But ultimately, assuming you're over 18 and everything else, you're in charge of you. And even if the person doesn't agree to drop the topic, you can always tell them, well, I just want you to know I love you and I love spending time with you, but this is actually not a topic I'm open to talking about. And so when you do bring it up, I'm just going to have to close out the conversation, shift away to a different part of the house or the room. And please know it's not because I don't love you and don't want to spend time with you. In fact, I do. I'd prefer you retire the subject for a week so we could spend more time together, but I'm just not up personally for that. And so I owe it to you and to myself to just absent myself from that. So those are just a couple scenarios. I acknowledge that, of course, people could be stressing you out for all kinds of different reasons, but those are a couple of basic ideas about boundaries in relationships.
I think that's really helpful, Dr. Chloe. And you really hit on something there with setting boundaries because, I owe it to myself and I owe it to you, that it will actually improve your relationship with that person. And it's out of love that you set boundaries. So next, we're going to move on to a live question. So right now, our moderator, there we go. All right. How can I control my anger better? Dr. Chloe, take it away.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually get a lot of clients with anger management issues. And I do just want to say first that if your anger is in any kind of a place where it causes you to think about physical harm to yourself or others, by all means, please call 911. The types of anger management tips that I work with are usually more for people that they maybe yell at someone, or maybe they get snippy, or maybe they get passive aggressive. But the kinds of tips I'm talking about in general here are for those types of things. And if you're ever at a place where you think you could hurt anyone else, yourself or anyone else, please call 911 or, get help for that. But so to control your anger better, I would actually say the first thing to do in general is to, ironically, congratulate yourself when you realize you're getting angry. A lot of the anger management clients I work with have had negative experiences with their angry outbursts. And so what they try to do is say, I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to take it easy. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to let things get to me. And then they end up just stuffing it all down until they end up having a big outburst. And then the outburst actually only confirms to them, oh, damn it. When I get angry, things go sideways. And so I'm just going to try to stuff it harder down. I'm just going to not, get upset. And then the cycle just keeps repeating and getting worse. So what I encourage them to do is actually to pay attention to the anger and to welcome the awareness of it when it's at lower levels, because what we really want to do is have you learn how to express yourself when you're merely irritable, when something is happening that's bothering you and you're not like totally crazy about it, but you're just having an awareness that this is a friction point and that you want to talk about it. Anger is usually assigned in some ways that our boundaries are being a little bit crossed. And so we have that, need to learn how to articulate what's bothering us, to think about the needs that we have, and to figure out how to get them met. That's the healthy function of anger. So a thing you can do also is to, write down what's happening for you. Sometimes when we get really angry, we can start to even lose our ability to put our feelings into words. Like, that's why we have that saying, like, I was just seeing red, right? Like, I just, I couldn't even articulate what I needed or wanted. And so sometimes just journaling and writing down, like, here's what happened today, and here's why I'm so upset. And then as you're writing, you'll probably be like, yeah, and then he did the same thing 2 weeks ago, and that's why I'm really angry. And like, you just jot it all down and really like kind of make the case on paper as to why you're so angry. And then see if you can find a way to soften the message if appropriate. And, talk to the person and say, look, I have to acknowledge to you, I found myself getting pretty upset about X, Y, and Z. And I wanted to just explain why, to see if we can agree on something different moving forward in this type of situation. So again, we control our anger, making sure not to stuff it down, but really learning how to actually harness it and use it. And I want to thank you again, because I'll tell you, I personally used to really eschew anger. Like, I wanted to never be angry. I thought anger was an ugly emotion. This is me as a teenager. I'm not a teenager anymore. And this was me pre-psychology training and pre-therapy. So, but I used to just think anger was an ugly emotion, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And what happened is I ended up getting mistreated a lot by people, because people would mistreat me and I would just try to be really nice. And then I would build up a lot of just passive aggressive, kind of resentment or low expectations. I would come to expect people to treat me poorly because I wasn't allowing my anger when I was encountering poor treatment to cause me to, shift into setting better boundaries or ending the relationship or asserting myself or whatever. And so ironically, again, people who don't want to actually learn how to deal with anger end up getting kind of bitter and resentful, and it actually breeds anger. So what I finally learned in therapy and with psychology training is that the best thing to do when we find ourselves getting angry is to assume that we might have some kind of good reason, and then try to figure out how to describe what that reason is, and then take some kind of healthy action around that reason. And if there's no reason and you can't find a reason, and you're just angry, then I would encourage you to go to therapy and try to explore yourself and have someone ask you some probing questions, maybe, to help you figure out why you're so angry.
Thank you, Dr. Chloe, and thank you to, I think, Alexandra, who asked that question. I think that was really insightful and such a great thing to remember, that the more we repress an emotion, actually sometimes the more powerful it becomes. We talk about that a bit in our anxiety course, and learning to be grateful for some of these emotions and what they're actually telling us. So next, we are going to move into some questions specific to the pandemic, because, it's very timely and there are a lot of things people are asking right now on this topic. So this one actually made my heart hurt a little bit, but it's about a parent who has a child who is very affectionate and loves hugs more than anything. Now, it may be years before she can hug anyone outside of her immediate family. How do I explain that people aren't safe now?
Okay. Yes, that's a really heartfelt question. And I'm a mom myself of a 3.5-year-old. So I just want to say I totally get this. I don't mean I totally get it, like I have all the answers. I just mean I totally get the feeling and the sentiment there. At least I can relate to it. So one thing I would want to think about is the language that we use with kids. It is so important. And so to say people aren't, it says, how do I explain that people aren't safe now? And so I would start with that premise, right? I would try to potentially reframe it that people actually are staying safe by having physical distance. And I personally have heard recently a move to shift away from the phrase social distancing and into the phrase physical distancing. And I'm a big fan of that, because I'm a social person. Human beings are tribal animals. We're not meant to be apart. And we may be physically distant, but as we all can see right here, right now, we are relating. So I would try to explain potentially to your child. I don't know how old they are, but even my son, who's 3.5, can grasp this, that we're staying apart, physically apart, because it's the safest thing to do right now, because there's a virus, but we still love each other, we still care about each other, and in fact we're keeping the physical distance because we care about each other. And then what I do with my son is we also bring in a physical component to it. So he likes to blow kisses to people, and then what they do is they catch the kiss and they put it in their heart, and he asks them to do the same, to blow him a kiss, and he catches the kiss and puts it in his heart. And depending on the level of friendships that the child has, that may or may not be appropriate, but I'm just saying that there are things that we can do to in a positive way, to challenge ourselves, to say, how can we communicate to people that we care about each other, even though we don't have the normal tools available to do that.
Great. Yeah, I think we all have to be a little creative right now, in a lot of different ways. And that's one of the reasons we're coming to you via this live stream. And, I think in some ways it's pushed us to be creative in ways that have been great. I don't know, myself, I find I'm talking to some of my long distance friends way more actually now because of the pandemic. So sometimes the distance, it can be surmountable. But I think that was a great answer for kids and helping them understand that people are safe and this is how we are being safe right now. So we'll see if there's a live Q&A coming in here. Awesome. How do you, and actually I think I saw a couple different versions of this question. So this is a great one, which is, how do you maintain a friendship that you care about with a person who has really different beliefs than you? I think that's really relevant to this time period right now. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Dr. Chloe.
Oh, yes. I love that question. I have to say, I love it, because it conveys a desire to maintain friendships with people who have different beliefs. And that those are actually some of the richest, most rewarding friendships that we can have, is with people who bring us a different perspective. So, the first key ingredient is to have a desire to do so, which it sounds like you absolutely do. And there's different ways of navigating the difference in beliefs. So, if it seems like every time the topic arises that you feel like you end up kind of sparring with the person, and it just feels not enjoyable to you, like you actually really enjoy connecting with them about everything else except for that one topic, you could just, what we call in psychology, narrate your experience, be transparent, which is just to tell them, to just say, I have to tell you, I really like you and I totally respect you, even though we have different beliefs. It's completely fine. In fact, I cherish, the chance to be friends with people who have different beliefs, but I don't want our friendship to become about our differences. I actually want it to really just be more about the stuff that we bond on. And so if it's okay with you, I'd rather we avoid the topic of such and such. But I want you to know it's not because I don't, respect what you have to say about it. I just personally don't like focusing on that topic as much. And I love focusing with you on, and I would be prepared and have in advance X, Y, and Z, like 3 things that you really do particularly love and enjoy to kind of stimulate to that person to think about. Because otherwise, if you're saying, let's not talk about such and such, it's like saying, don't think about pink elephants. So then you would also name, like, so I really like talking about cooking and social media and books that we're reading together. And so like, I enjoy that part. So that way, that would be one way to do it. Another way to do it, though, depending on the person and the nature of yourself and of the other person, is you might enjoy the chance to learn about it, to say, look, I want you to know, like, we do see this issue differently, but I want to understand you. Part of us being friends to me is like learning to understand you, to know you and to let you know me. And so I'm wondering if it might be interesting for both of us to like share about why we do believe what we believe. You might want to consider having a rule that you're allowed to ask questions when you both share. but that neither one of you is going to try to persuade the other person. And that's just an option. Some people love sparring and they love debate, and you might just want to talk all about it. But if your goal is to just say, like, we have different beliefs and I want to approach this topic really gingerly and gently, but I do want to learn, I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it with you from my end too. But to feel safe, I'm wondering if we might talk about it, but make a rule that we can only ask each other questions. We can't like give comments about the other person's belief. But either way, I mean, I'm sure there's a million other ways to do it as well. You could read about the other person's culture, and ask them about it, share with them that you're reading a book depending on the nature of the difference. But I just want to congratulate you again. The idea that you're asking that question, round of applause, seriously, that you want to learn how to befriend people that have different beliefs than you. I just think that is something that people are not doing enough of today. So cheers to you.
Yeah, I think it's so important to congratulate Maura for that question, because it is really, really great to be maintaining friendships with people who are different than us. I think it enriches all of us. And yeah, thank you for those insights, Dr. Chloe.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end, and I want to ask one question about coronavirus. So my friends and my family and friends think I am being a germophobe about coronavirus. What should I do? And this kind of touches on what I talked about in the opening, which is that we have kind of these different beliefs, different levels of comfort, and people are trying to navigate that right now. So I would love some insights on how to do that.
Yeah, so that is a great question that touches on a lot of the issues that we have talked about here today. And it definitely goes through the friends, the family, the romantic relationships that can come up in all kinds of situations. And I do think it's important to recognize that each of us is a unique person. So we not only live in different climates, and that are experiencing different levels and issues around the coronavirus, but we also all have different, personal health makeups and communities. So I would just urge all of us to try to not judge each other and to be open. And I realize the person asking this is probably saying, I'm happy to be open, but I'm getting judged. And so if that's happening to you, that people are thinking that you're being a germaphobe, I guess my first thought would be, why not allow them to think that, right? If they have an opinion that you're being a little bit overzealous, okay. I mean, they have a right to have that opinion. But my question then would be, are they verbalizing that opinion frequently in a way that feels disrespectful to you? And if that is happening, then you might want to do something different. You might want to say, look, I just want you to know that you have every right to navigate coronavirus your own way. I'm doing it my way for reasons of my own. And you might even say that you may or may not even fully understand, my entire medical condition and situation. And I'm doing what I feel is best for myself and for my community. And if you disagree with me, that's okay. I'm not here to evangelize or change you, but I would ask the same of you, that you would please not, try to deride or belittle what I'm doing. Can we just agree to disagree? And I would hope that would, be something most people could agree to. And if somebody could not agree, to stop trying to force you to expose yourself, in ways that were making you feel medically uncomfortable, then you might want to just tell the person, look, if you're not willing to drop the topic, I'm going to have to absent myself, from this type of conversation, if it's going to just constantly come up, because I don't think it's helpful to you or to me or to our relationship. And so I'd really like to not go there anymore. But if you feel that, you must persist in trying to stop me from doing what I feel I need to do to protect myself, then that will cause me to take a step back.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really helpful answer. So there are so many questions coming in, and I wish we could answer absolutely all of them. But unfortunately, we're coming towards the end now. And I think this is a great chance to ask everyone here what kind of experts they would want to see or learn from somebody else, career coaches, any other kinds of experts that you're interested in. We're going to be posting a survey in the Facebook group after the fact, so that you can give your feedback on this event, and then also give us feedback on what you want to see next. I also just want to quickly let people know we have these free email courses. We talked about a couple of topics today that are really relevant to them: how to improve your marriage, how to manage your anxiety, how to accelerate your job search. This is stuff that's on everyone's mind right now, so hopefully those resources can be helpful to some of you. Not to mention our newsletter, where you can learn more about these future webinars and courses. And then Dr. Chloe, I don't know if you want to add anything about where people can learn more about you. We're so grateful for your time
today.
Thank
you so much. Yeah, so actually drchloe.com/hello. So it's drchloe.com/hello. Or if you Google Dr. Chloe, then you'll see me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I have a newsletter, of course, as well. And I love to share my WikiHow articles in my newsletter every month, in fact. So it's been such a great chance to connect live with some of the people that have been reading these WikiHow articles that, WikiHow and I have been sharing. And I would love as well to come back and to share about other topics and ideas in the future. And thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Chloe, and thank you to everyone who asked a question. Again, I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but next time we'll keep having these. And thank you for showing up and for engaging. I think we had a great time. So thanks, Dr. Chloe. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. Sign up for our newsletter so you can hear about these events, and we will see you at the next one.
Sounds great. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr. Chloe. Bye.
Bye.